At 2 a.m., 400 years ago, entire cities were awake. Not from noise, not from stress. This was normal, expected, every single night. And then, somewhere between one century and the next, this behavior vanished completely, erased so thoroughly that when historians first found evidence of it, they thought it was a mistake in the records. Here's the strange part. Your body still remembers it. Right now, tonight, if you wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. for no reason, feeling oddly alert in the darkness before drifting back off, that's not insomnia. That might be 400,000 years of programming trying to switch back on. Let me explain what actually happened. For almost all of human history, people didn't sleep the way you do. They didn't lie down at 10 p.m. and wake up at 6 a.m. in one unbroken block. Instead, they slept in two separate sessions. The first sleep would start shortly after dark. A few hours later, they'd wake up, not groggy, not confused, but calm and clear-headed. This waking period could last 1, sometimes 2 hours. People used it to pray, think, talk quietly with a partner, or just lie in the dark reflecting. Then, they drift into a second sleep and wake with the sunrise. Historians call this biphasic sleep, and the evidence for it is everywhere once you know to look. Old letters mentioning first sleep and second sleep like they were as normal as breakfast and dinner. Court records describing crimes committed in the watch between sleeps. Even old prayer books with specific prayers meant to be said during the midnight waking. This wasn't rare. This wasn't a strange minority habit. This was simply what sleep was for nearly the entire span of human existence. So what changed? One invention. Something so ordinary today that you probably don't think about it twice a day. Artificial light. Before electric lighting, night was night, truly dark. Once the sun went down, there was very little to do. No screens, no streetlights, nothing to keep the brain engaged. So people went to bed early, sometimes right after dusk. And because they were going to bed so early, a full 8 hours of continuous sleep simply wasn't necessary yet. The body woke itself in the middle of the night because it had already gotten enough rest for that first stretch. But here's the twist that made everything disappear. As cities began lighting their streets and homes began lighting their rooms, bedtimes crept later and later. People started going to bed closer to when we do now. And with less total time available for sleep, the body had no room left for that natural midnight gap. The two sleep sessions collapsed into one. Not because it was healthier, not because scientists recommended it, simply because modern life ran out of darkness. Within a few generations, biphasic sleep wasn't just less common, it was forgotten entirely. By the time your grandparents were born, almost nobody remembered it had ever existed. Now, here's where it gets personal. In the 1990s, a psychiatrist ran an experiment. He took a group of people and put them in a room with no artificial light for 4 weeks, mimicking the length of ancient winter nights. No phones, no lamps, no screens, just natural darkness for roughly 14 hours a night. Within a few weeks, without anyone telling them to, every single participant fell back into the exact same pattern our ancestors described. First sleep, a quiet waking period in the middle of the night, then second sleep. Their bodies hadn't forgotten. They had just never been given the darkness required to remember. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If your ancestors did this for hundreds of thousands of years, and modern humans slipped back into it within weeks of losing artificial light, is the 8-hour block you struggle to maintain every night actually natural for you? Or is it something you've been forcing your body into for the last 100 years? Think about how often you hear people say they can't sleep through the night, how common 3 a.m. waking has become, how normal it feels to lie there, frustrated, checking the clock, assuming something is wrong with you. What if nothing is wrong with you? What if your body is quietly trying to run a program that worked perfectly for 400,000 years? Except now it's being interrupted by an environment that was never designed for it. One filled with blue light at midnight, stress that never fully switches off, and a culture that treats 8 unbroken hours as the only acceptable version of rest. This isn't a call to abandon modern sleep. Continuous sleep works fine for most people, most of the time, but understanding this forgotten history changes something important. It changes how you interpret your own body. The next time you wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. and your mind feels strangely clear instead of foggy, resist the urge to panic. Resist the urge to reach for your phone, flood your eyes with light, and force yourself back into an unbroken sleep that your ancestors never actually needed. Lie there, let your mind wander in the dark, the way people did for thousands of generations before street lamps and screens told them that waking at night meant something was broken. Because maybe it isn't insomnia, maybe it's an inheritance, a pattern so old it existed before written language, before agriculture, before fire was fully tamed. And it's still living quietly inside you, waiting for the dark to bring it back. The real question isn't why ancient humans slept in 2 parts. It's this: how much of what you call normal today is actually just the most recent invention pretending to be natural? And how much of your ancient self is still awake inside you, waiting in the dark for a version of night that no longer exists?